Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Hoosier Football Tailgate here on the Believe Network. Into January now, just getting ready to head into the month of February. Coach is still out on the road recruiting as they are finishing up some of the work here in the 23 class, but we're 24 class, but working more so on the 25s and 26s, and it's been busy. Not only for the Indiana Hoosiers and Coach Signetti, but all the coaches out and about on the recruiting trail. And before we get started tonight, I want to thank Bet Online for their sponsorship. Remember now with all the games, all the football games are now down to one with the Super Bowl coming up, as well the NBA, college basketball, NHL hockey. Bet Online is your number one source for all things sports wagering. The up-to-minute odds, statistics, and data you need to make a smart wager is all found on Bet Online, be it on your mobile device or desktop. Remember, Bet Online is where the game starts. Well, tonight I want to bring on a special guest for me. A young man that started with me back in 2009 after he had a stellar career at my alma mater, Ball State University, where I also coached for 8 years. He was a phenomenal linebacker for the Cardinals back in the day. We'll get his actual dates of years because I think his last year was 2008, but we'll let Bryant Haines, the new defensive coordinator for the Indiana Hoosiers. A little bit different than making about $6,000 a year.
Yeah, times have changed a little bit, Coach.
Well, we were talking before we came on about where you're staying in a very I would call it budget friendly hotel chain. Not that Marriott's cheap or anything, but you kind of stick with what you've known. When you're on the road recruiting, it's kind of right there on your fingertips on your phone or on a laptop or something where you say, where am I staying tonight? You just pop up, what you're comfortable with. Now that you're in the Big Ten, you don't have to worry about the budget as much, Bryant. Come on now.
I told you, Coach, I stick with what I know, man. I'm a simple guy, so
now,
a little Marriott hotel is fine by me.
That's right. Now, what years were you at Ball State? Because I get that confused a little bit. Was your last year 08?
It was, yeah, you nailed it. My last season was 08, and then that spring I graduated in 09, and then I linked up with you, I think that June.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was 04 to 08 were my years at Ball State.
Now, 08, now was that the championship year for you guys or no?
It was. I mean, that was the year that we were 12-0.
That's right.
Ranked, went into the championship game against Buffalo, and actually ended up losing that game. But that was Coach Hoke's last year at Ball State as well.
Right. Well, the other funny, you say Buffalo. Now, Pete Limbo, who came in after Brady Hoke left, is now the new head coach at Buffalo. And he ended up taking from Ball State a defensive line coach, and I can't think of his name right now, but he played for Pete at Ball State. And that's one of the unique things that we have from being a Ball State alum. We got quite a few guys that have gone in or coached at some time in the college ranks over different levels. So there's quite a bit of a pretty good coaching tree that we're assembling from Ball State.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, matter of fact, I just saw that Coach Kyle Hoke left San Diego State. I think he got on at Texas A&M. So to your point, I mean, at all levels, whether it be SEC or
and Joey Lynch just got hired down at Texas A&M, and he's a Ball State guy. Bill Lynch's son, who I worked for a number of years there. So we got Cardinals everywhere, but we're going to talk about Hoosiers now because that's the brand you represent. And the unique thing is you you grad assistant at Indiana in, what was that, 2012?
Yeah, it was 2012. And that was, so I did 1 year with you. I did 2 years at another Division III school. And then in 2012, I joined the staff with Kevin Wilson, Kevin Johns, matter of fact, helped me get on, Mike Eckler, Doug Mallory. So great staff in 2012. That was my first stint in Bloomington.
Well, and I think when we talked, when you were with me, I think I remember telling you, so I used to tell all the young guys, if you can get to places to learn something that you're not accustomed to, you're going to be better for it. And I think that's what you've done. You, like you said, you were with me for one. I didn't drive you out, so that's the positive. You spent another year at a different D3 institution, pretty acclaimed. That was up at Adrian. Then you went back to being a GA, right?
Right.
At AU, and man, you had, like you said, you had a plethora of really good coaches there. Like you said, I mean, you had some top-notch guys to learn from.
Yeah, definitely. I felt so blessed. Like I had that all along the way, starting with you. Learning from you at Manchester was beneficial to me. And I remember that being part of our first conversation. The very first time we talked about, the job and the opportunity, you mentioned like go somewhere new, go somewhere, challenge yourself, learn from new people. I've been so fortunate along the way to learn from great football coaches. And that first stint in Bloomington was definitely that way. Doug Mallory was the defensive coordinator, Mike Eckler, the linebackers coach. We had Mark Hagan as D tackles coach. John Fabris was there, who had SEC experience. He did a really nice job. Brandon Shelby, a young corners coach, I learned a lot from. And then he stayed at IU for a long time. So that was a good staff. Not only that, but one of the guys I might have learned the most from was my fellow GA. His name was Chris Shula. He's currently the pass game coordinator for the Rams. So, I mean, we had a great staff.
I forgot about Chris.
Yeah, he's a great coach.
And he's been with the Rams now for quite a few years, hasn't he? Or did he just get there?
No, he's been there for, I'm going to say 5 or 6. He was with the Chargers before that. I actually flew down and did a little professional development with him when he was with San Diego. Yeah,
that's the unique thing about, like I said, you're building that branch of people that you get to know from, and it pays big dividends for you down the road. And you just don't know when something will transpire from meeting somebody that you come across in that regard. Now, high school, I can't remember you go to high school. You went to
I went to Piqua High School. It's about 20 miles north of Dayton. Yeah.
Okay.
I had a great coach there too. I got a name drop on one more. My high school football coach was really a huge inspiration for me. I fell in love with the game of football through Bill Neese. That was my high school football coach at Piqua, and he's a Hall of Fame coach in the state of Ohio. And as much as I learned from everybody along the way, it all started with Coach and his passion for the sport. That was a huge inspiration for me, no question.
Yeah. And, Pick was a good, solid program. And like I said, you, after that, went to Ball State. And kind of what got you in, what was in your mind about, man, I want to coach, or what do I need to do? I mean, kind of that, talk me through what that felt from your perspective, right? You're done playing. You're not going to have that NFL career maybe. And now you're thinking, oh man, what do I do now?
Right. I'll be honest with you. It was probably in me all along, just because I was so passionate about the sport. I don't think it really clicked until, made my first back surgery. So my back surgeries ultimately led to the end of my career, because I was a football player. I was a freshman All-American. I had a 125 plus tackle season. There was a chance to play at that final stage, and I was excited about that. Some of the injuries took a toll on me. After that first back surgery, I started to think to myself, okay, what's the exit ramp? Because I'm not willing to say goodbye to football. That would not have been the answer. So I think at that point, what I did is I went back to my father. And one of the last things he said to me in terms of, giving me advice about work and so forth was, just find a job where you feel like you're not working. Never work a day in your life.
That's right. That's right.
And so that's when it all came together, man. Through the back surgeries and realizing I'm not able mentally and physically to give the game up. Coaching's the avenue. And my dad was right on the money. I've never worked a day in my life. So I'm so grateful.
That's right. You get paid to do what you love to do, and you don't feel like you're getting a chance to work at anything. You're just playing the game still, even though you're well outside the white lines. It's like you get the best seat in the house on Saturdays because you get to watch it from a close perspective. But I relate with that commentary because, that was what I was thinking all along when I left. And what do I need to do? And in your path kind of led to your path, because your path wasn't easy. You didn't get to Indiana with the proverbial golden spoon in your mouth, as far as coaching is concerned. Your road that you took, your journey was unique, because not only did you work at a couple of D3 schools, but you actually took a big gamble and went out to Cal. When you were at Cal State, or where were you at?
It was Cal Davis.
Davis. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Here we're getting phone calls.
You're a popular man, Coach.
I'm a popular man. Yeah, it always happens. So you went to Cal Davis. Now, that was a 1AA program, right?
Yeah, it was an FCS program at the time, and they were playing in the Big Sky Conference. And at that time, that conference was really good. I mean, that was when Eastern Washington had Cooper Cup and was really taking off. Montana State. I mean, that league was really loaded, and that was a gamble. I mean, I remember talking to you about that, because you were kind of like, what do I do? Because this was well beyond your Indiana GA-ship, because after that you went to Ohio State, correct? Yeah. So Indiana and then Ohio State. I did one season with Coach Meyer, Coach Fickle, Vrabel, and other staff that just taught me so much. A huge risk coming off of that was I was done being a GA. Like I needed to get back onto the football field. Being a GA is a great thing, and they're very necessary, but coaching's different. I needed to get back on the field, so I took a huge gamble, and that's where Coach Signetti and I first linked up. It was at IUP, so that was a division school. Yeah, okay. And that was in the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference.
And here's a guy and we'll get into Coach Sig and his, a little bit and your relationship, but here's a guy that came from Alabama. Perennial top is all you can get, Nick Saban. And he goes to show his love for the game of football. And there's a connection to IUP because his father and things of that magnitude. But he went back there. You joined your brother there for one season. And you're right. And your brother now at Catawba. He's the head coach at Catawba.
It's a tough one.
I had to get that.
Catawba, but you're right. He was there when I got on at IUP, so he was already connected with Coach Signetti. Coach Signetti had done 2 seasons before I connected with him for his third.
And he had a really good, successful program there at IUP. I mean, he had brought it back. It was down a little bit, but he kind of started bringing it back to its prominence because that was a big time Division II school. Back in that, mid 2000s.
Right. And I love the fact that you mentioned his father, Frank Cignetti, because Coach, the big guy, we called him the big guy, was the one that took IUP to the top, late 80s, 90s. I mean, they were making national title runs. And then they had fallen off for a little bit while Coach Signetti was at Alabama with Saban. And to your point, I think another gamble, right? Coach Signetti was ready to be a head football coach. He bet on himself. And he took that program from what was, struggling a little bit and turned it back into another power. I mean, he turned it into a great program. And it happened quickly, too.
Yeah. And, just for, people wonder why maybe a person like Coach Signetti coming from Alabama would go to IUP. There's only so many head coaching jobs out there in the world of college football. And if the good fortune of the man above gives you that opportunity that you slide right into, great. But some guys have to go and work their way up, in that regard. But so you went to there. Now you were coaching linebackers at the time, weren't you, or D-line?
I was D-line. Yeah, I was a defensive line coach.
Okay, so you kept your hands in the D-line. This happens all the time, Brian. I'm sorry.
It's all good, brother.
I'm gonna have to turn my phone off. I'm not that popular. So now, what did you go to? And this is what I like talking about: is the salaries that you go to do the love of the game. So, what was the salary when you went to IUP?
Not good. It was not good. It was not a lot of money. Yeah.
And you had did you live with your brother?
For a while, yeah. While
that helped.
What, they had a house. They had a house. IUP had a house that was set up for these young coaches because it was like $7,000, something like that.
Right.
So they had a house for us because we couldn't afford anything where we could all stay, and it was really cheap rent. And this house, Coach, it was tough living, man. It was tough living. There was a like on the first floor beneath the bathroom. The ceiling is like caving in. It looked like a big wet spot. Come to find out, after I left IUP like a year or two later, it actually crashed through. I mean, you got a bathroom falling into the living room, and this is where all these young coaches were staying, man. But like you said, love of the game, and it wasn't about the paycheck. It's never been about the paycheck. It's about the work. It's about the kids. It's about the relationships. And it's about competing and winning.
Right. I took my first job out from Ball State as a GA, went to Northwood University up in Midland, Michigan, D2 school, worked for Pat Rima, rest his soul. And he gave me my first job making $6,000 out of the hopper. Okay. Then it bumped up to 18 and I was wealthy. Now, when I went to Ball State, now Division I, Ball State, I was making $24,000 a year and a car. So if you add that car into the equation, you're making, close to 30. But I'm not making like 90, 100,000 like some MAC schools are now paying. When I left Ball State, I was making 37,000 when we got fired. So, and 2 kids. So we do it for the love of the game. You don't think about that aspect of stuff because it takes care of itself. So you went from there then out to California. You took a risk on that one. I remember you talking about that. I remember you would call me and, I'm thinking about doing this. And
right. I think I might have been at the convention, matter of fact. I think that's when you're still working those conventions. And when I saw you down there, I wanted to bounce it off you, just as a guy that I've been with and trust. And I wanted to get your perspective on it. But it was a little bit of a dangerous gamble. We were doing really well at IUP, but I was getting a little bit comfortable. And Coach Signetti's the first one to tell you, like, if you start getting comfortable and complacent, you better mix it up. So that was part of it. Talking with you, I think you were on that same team. Like, dude, you got to take a chance in this profession. Like, even if things go south. And the issue was that staff had been there for like 3 years, and they just hadn't taken off. And usually that 3 to 4 year watermark is kind of make or break. So I think maybe when I told you, like, Coach, I might go out there, we can't get it done. And where am I at then? And you said, man, you got to take risks. You got to take chances, And unfortunately, it didn't work out. I went out there and I learned a lot. I was with Dave Braun, Bert Watts, another staff I'm so thankful for. With Coach Watts is now with the Carolina Panthers, and Dave Braun's head football coach at Northwestern. Good guys, great defensive minds. We had a lot of fun in there. We didn't get enough wins, and ultimately had to make a move.
And that's part of the game. I mean, it's part of the game, unfortunately. But that's when you and then you made your way back to Coach Sig. And then when you went back the second time, were you coordinating any at that time for him at IUP or no?
No, at that point, I was just a linebackers coach. He had hired Tony Trisciani, who's now the head football coach at Elon University. Tony was coming in from Villanova. At that time, that Villanova defense, that 3-3 stack they had, and some of the blitz angles they had of that was really taking that side of the conference by storm. So he brought Coach Trish on, and I was just grateful to still have a job and be a linebackers coach.
And then Coach
with Coach Signetti again,
Yeah. And then Coach Signetti gets the chance to go and take the Elon job, right? And what was your feeling when, he tapped you on the shoulder and said, "Hey, do you want to come?" What was, the one thing I respect looking at Coach Sig's background and staff, he's taking guys with him. Some guys get a job and next thing they're out looking for something different. And that's the one thing I respect of Coach Sig, that he's taking guys with him. But what's that feeling like? Because when that happens, there's that pit in your stomach a little bit because you don't know what's going to happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Those are always hard. Now that one in particular, that was a true blessing. I just got fired from UC Davis. So here I am. I'm in Sacramento with no money. An old beat up 2003 Pontiac Grand Prix, and Coach Signetti calls me and says, "Hey, drive back across the country, get into North Carolina and come to this spot called Elon. I got a spot for you." And I said, "Coach, I don't know if I can get there. I don't know if I can physically get there." Well, Coach Signetti sees that as like, you're probably trying to get a different job, aren't you? I'm going to look elsewhere. I want to get there. Let me get there. It ended up working out, but man, getting that call was a blessing.
Yeah,
I wanted to be back with Coach anyway, but I didn't want to leave the game. And you know how it feels when you're with one of those staffs that does get let go. It's like, gosh, I'm hoping for any opportunity at all.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I know that feeling. And it's not, again, we have respect for those guys that go through that every year. There's that time period where something happens, you don't get enough W's, and next thing you know, you're out. And and it's unfortunate, but like you said, you're hoping and wishing for that to happen. But here's a guy that had you before, got a new job, and he must have liked what you showed him because he gave you a call and a job at Elon. Now, when you went to Elon, same thing, linebackers there too?
Linebackers, yep.
Okay.
That was with Coach Trisciani as the DC, so that's how that became.
That's right. Okay. Now, how long were you guys at Elon?
We did two years at Elon.
2 years. I know. And and Elon was in the same conference as JMU at the time, correct?
Correct.
No? Yeah.
Yeah, we sure were. We played each other both years, matter of fact, when we were at Elon.
Right. And this is prior to JMU making the jump, if right, to a D1 status type of deal, right?
Not yet. When I was at Elon, what was the name of that conference?
Big South? Was it the Big South?
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was because I think they added some new teams to it, so it's kind of changed. CAA. I'm sorry, yes, Colonial Athletic Association, the CAA. So JMU was in the CAA. Obviously, Elon was too, so we played them both years. After that, we went to JMU. JMU was still in that league, so we did 3 years in the CAA still before making the big move.
Because you guys made some runs in the 1AA playoffs, right?
Right. Yeah. All 3 years, we were a factor all 3 years.
Right.
First year in 19, made it to the final game, championship game against North Dakota State.
That's
lost
right.
by I want to say 6 points maybe. And had a chance to win it. The second season, 20, was the COVID year. So that was in the spring. It was kind of a condensed playoff.
Yeah, that's right.
Gosh, we flew out to Sam Houston State, and we are kicking their tail, Coach. I think at halftime, we might have been up like 28, like 4 scores or something like that. End up losing by a field goal. Tough break there. They went on to win the title that year. And then year 3, ran in North Dakota State again, Fargo Dome, semifinal game. And they got us again in the Dome.
That's a tough place to go win at. I'll tell you that much.
That's tough.
Now, when you at JMU, were you co-defensive coordinator your first year there, or was that your second year and then you elevated to DC your third year?
I was co-DC with Corey Heatherman being the defensive coordinator. Corey just got hired on over in Minnesota with Coach PJ Fleck, so he's the DC there now. So looking forward to going against him. But a good friend of mine, he was the defensive coordinator those first 3 years. I was a co-defensive coordinator and coaching the linebackers. Okay.
And then you got your first time being that guy, the DC, your third year at JMU. Now, tell me about that, because that's a monumental moment in your coaching career. Now you've ascended to what you're trying to do. You're trying to elevate yourself to the point where be a coordinator, run your show, run your defense and things. But talk about that moment that, you get elevated to being DC for JMU.
Yeah, there was a lot of emotions with that one. I was excited. It's what I've worked towards. I felt like I was ready for it. I felt like I was
Mhm.
ready. Um, I was grateful. I was grateful.
Well, sure.
It's Coach Signetti trusting me again. It's saying, you got the keys to the car now. Um, but I mean, there's challenges that come with that too. So was I stressed? Was I nervous? Absolutely, all those things. But it was my time. So when you get those opportunities, you say yes and you move forward. And that's what we
Yeah.
did. Had a great staff. Took some of the things that Coach Hedeman did, added some things, took away some things, changed a few things. Keep in mind, this is me becoming a coordinator as we're making the move up. I didn't get to be a coordinator against FCS opponents.
Right.
We get to run through everybody. This was high level competition. This is 50-50 in, week out.
Yeah.
Good offensive opponents.
Yeah, and this is the Sun Belt, correct? Is that the Sun? Were you in the Sun Belt at that time?
We were, and the thing about it, Coach, I know you know this, but some of the listeners might not, is we didn't do a transitional year. Like this wasn't like halfway in, halfway out, half FCS, half
right.
Full bore ahead, all FBS opponents directly into the Sun Belt, which, as you know, is a great conference.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a Mid-American type of league, in that regard. It's that, what they call mid majors nowadays in some respects. But like you said, you got a lot of good football talent in that conference, coaches and stuff. But, first game for you as the DC, where was that game at? Was it at home? Was it on the road? What was that like?
It was a home game at night against Middle Tennessee State, who was a nice bowl win. Yeah. Had a lot of their offense coming back. They were a very explosive offense, very, very spread, very up-tempo. They had hired a new offensive coordinator. So there were a lot of unknowns going to that game, but I remember the stadium was rocking. Yes, that Saturday night at Bridgeport Stadium, it was a great first experience to call the defense.
Yeah, and JMU's got a great experience. They're for that mid-major level type of experience, they got a nice stadium, very supportive community behind it. So like you said, you get student involvement and all that. So that was last season. Now, did Coach Sig fire you at any time on the sideline or during a game?
Close. he might fire me for a play or two, but usually he rehires me.
Yeah, you always get the ire of the head coach if something goes wrong one way or the other. He's looking for somebody. But now you have success at JMU. You kind of capture the limelight of college football that ultimately has college game day coming to the campus and stuff. You're undefeated. You're fighting now for an appeal to get into a potential bowl out there, and the NCAA's blocked you like twice. And fast forward, it didn't work out in terms of that Cinderella undefeated year, but you did accomplish the fact the NCAA basically relented and let JMU go to a bowl, which was much deserved.
Yeah, they never relented. Matter of fact, they never did. The only reason JMU got into a bowl is because there weren't enough bowl eligible teams outside of JMU to make it and fill all the spots. So They never relented. They never broke. Their line of messaging on that. So they were going to try to prevent us from going to a bowl game. Not enough bowl eligible teams, and so because of that, JMU did get a chance to go to the Armed Forces Bowl, which was great.
So now, Coach Siggs had a really good run from Elon now to JMU. He's kept the train really moving down the tracks, capturing that lightning in the bottle, so to speak, with everything. And all of a sudden, the Indiana job comes open. And, no one likes to see something happen to a fellow coach at any time. But it does happen. Did you know that Coach Sig was involved with that search, or did he, hey, tell me about Indiana? I mean, because you were there. I mean, you kind of had the lay of the land, what they did have, what they didn't have. I mean, you were at Ohio State. What was the difference? I mean, did he have that conversation with you at any time?
Yeah, there's a chance that behind closed doors that there were some conversations and kind of what you're saying, maybe just him trying to get a feel for
Yeah, just
Bloomington and the university.
yeah, I mean, yeah, he doesn't have the total picture that you may be able to fill him in on about the people that are there. This is a good guy. This guy's, he's a guy's going to help us win type of deal. Having been there, because there's a lot of same people. I mean, Scott Dolson was there when you were there.
Yes, Scott was here. He wasn't in the role that he's in now as the athletic director, but he was a big part of things. I remember Scott from my first stint, absolutely, and yeah, some of those conversations took place, and obviously we're still at the time we were still trying to win ball games in Harrisonburg, Virginia, but yeah, those conversations took place. He wanted to get a scoop of the land.
Yeah, and now he gets the job. And, at some point he kind of came out of nowhere, I guess you could say. But rightfully so in that regard, just based upon his resume and things of that nature, and him hitting it off with Scott Dolson, the AD there. He gets the job and you get that chance to come. It's a homecoming, but at the same time, you're going back as the DC at a Big Ten school, a school that you GA'd at under Doug Mallory and all these coaches. I mean, what's going through your mind in that regard?
It's a lot of those same emotions that I had the first time. It's all those exact same emotions, man. I was excited. Are you nervous and stressed about being a Big Ten defensive coordinator? Sure, a little bit, but that's an opportunity. I have faith in myself. I was looking forward to hitting the ground running, to be honest with you. I was grateful. I'm ready. And I knew I was ready.
Yeah, I know you are. And the other thing is this DC opportunity, you finally get to that point of looking back at that $6,000 salary and the house that almost falls down on you, and you look back at that, and that's part of your journey, to where you're at now. And those are the moments, like you said, I think you said earlier, those are the moments that you cherish and you relish because of you look back and see who you got to be around to get to where you're at now. Hard work, being around good coaches, getting an idea how that played a part in you being in the spot you are now. That's the component that I wanted to get to, why we went on that little roundabout whirlwind of your journey, so to speak. How's it feel now being back at Indiana, something you're familiar with at IU? Here's a team that lost, I think, 5 games, 6 games, 6 points or less, I believe. You were there when, Kevin Wilson had some really good teams and, kind of broke through with some bowl games. What's that feeling like now that you're back at IU?
I'm just so grateful. I'm excited. IU can be a winner. IU can be a winner. IU football will be a winner. I knew that when Coach Signetti asked me that point blank, can you win there? I said, absolutely you can. Absolutely you can. So I'm just excited, man. I'm thrilled. And to your point, it was never about the money. I had a friend of mine say to me, when this all happened, like, man, it's like you hit the lottery. And what I said to him was, this isn't the lottery. The lottery is you pull the machine or you hit the button and you make a bunch of money. Like, this is not the lottery. This was earned. This was food stamps.
Oh, yeah.
$6,000 a year. Like, this was, to your word, this was a journey. This was a fight to get here, and I fought tooth and nail. And to see it all pay off.
Absolutely.
What I dreamed for. It was what I was shooting for the whole time.
Absolutely. And I think I told you I was proud of how you've gone about and done your, represented yourself through the years. And while I may not have been around you specifically, I always kept an eye on guys that worked for me at some point. And I know that you put a lot of work into where you're at now and being with Coach Sig. Now let's talk football. Let's talk the X's and O's of the game. Indiana's defense last year, and, Tom Allen, I think, came in as DC after you left, if I'm not mistaken, and went to Ohio State. Is that correct?
I think there was one more year there, and then that following year, I believe it was Coach Allen at DC. Correct? Yeah.
Yeah. And, he brought a defense and a philosophy there that they vastly improved in the defensive category with some things. And some of it was, scheme and stuff. Now, when you look at yourself as a defensive coordinator, what schemes are you? I mean, are you, within a scheme? Are you a little bit of this and a little bit of that? I mean, what does Coach Sig expect from you as the DC? Because every head coach is saying, I want you to run this, or we're recruiting to run this. What is he like in that regard?
Well, I will say, I'm very grateful that he does let me take the ownership of that. I will say he has things that he likes. Mm-hmm. He likes really good defensive linemen, and he prefers 4 of them to have their hand on the ground. So more times than not, I see myself as a 4-2-5, 4-3 type of guy.
And we're not telling him. We're not telling you the secrets here. That's college football throughout. Everybody's a 4-2, 4-3. There's something, because you got to start somewhere.
Right. Yeah, you got to start somewhere. And then that's kind of where we started. So we kind of build off of that idea, because what people don't understand is like the idea of a 4-2-5 defense versus a 3-4 defense is not really that different. You're talking about one guy standing up and then 2 other guys like moving over 3 inches. Like,
yeah, right.
You do a lot of the same things out of a 4-2-5 that you can out of a 3-4. And so we've started to build that. And what I like is I like to be inwardly simple with what we're doing and outwardly complex. So we have a myriad of coverages and a myriad of different fronts, and we try to cause chaos and confusion. But really what we're doing from an internal perspective, it's not that complex.
Yeah, it's just like offensive football. Always said if you had a tight end that you could move around, attach him, unattach him, spread him out, there's so many things you can get into that really handicaps a defense, just because a lot of defense are tight end related in their philosophy. But same thing, trying to carry a little chaos, but simplistic inwardly. That's kind of what you want to be, because you want guys being able to play at a high rate, and they can't be thinking if you're going to play against Ohio State, Michigan, some of these teams, you got to be full go and, let them turn it loose.
Oh, absolutely. I'll tell you, I tell my players this all the time. The best compliment that I've ever gotten as a defensive coordinator is, man, you guys play fast and they play hard. If I can get my guys to play fast and hard, I'm doing at least something right. Like that's a great way to start right there. My guys play fast and they play hard. And why do they do that? It's because they're not confused, because I'm not going to put things on their plate that are confusing, and they're going to slow them down, because to your point, I can't have them thinking. I got to have them reacting, playing really fast, and most importantly, attacking.
Coach Sig sets up in these press conference that I don't know if it stopped me on a dime, but it was like the word that you're always looking for in coaching or just anything in life. He says he spends his day trying to keep complacency out of the equation. He talked, and I'm not sure that was the exact quote, but he talked about complacency and what that, he's trying to defeat complacency daily. Coaches, players, staff, whatever, kind of explain his, that philosophy that he has as a head coach that he kind of permeates down to you guys as assistants.
Yeah. Well, first of all, he does a really good job of that. Like he has messages that permeate down. It starts at the top, and that's part of culture, right? It starts at the top, the messaging, who are we? What are we going to be? It's got to permeate down to the assistants and then into the players too. So I've always thought he does a great job of that. So I've loved working with him for all these years. But to that one, we really ran into complacency, or at least the threat of complacency, at a school like JMU. JMU was winning championships and, winning 10, 11 game seasons in our time there because we were so successful. But what that leads to is a bunch of guys that just assume that it's going to happen.
Right.
You don't have to put the work in anymore. I'll show up on Saturday. It's just going to occur. It'll just show up and we'll get the win. No, that's not how it works at all. You have to, you have to subscribe to the process, a day by day process that leads to success. But it's what you put in every single day that ultimately leads to what shows up on Saturday. So that's what he really hammered into at JMU. And then the quote that I think you're referring to is actually we want to get back to that point. The idea of complacency is something that is actually earned. When you have enough success, you actually get to a point where you have to fight complacency.
Right.
We're not even to that point in Bloomington yet. What we're fighting right now is softness, and that's what we spoke to.
Yeah, exactly.
We're looking to hammer out softness so we can start winning games and get to a point where ultimately we can look back and say, hey, we better start fighting complacency because we're having success.
Right. And but I think that it was so poignant in when he said it. It was like, man, that's the word I've been thinking of for 20 some odd years, about when you get to somewhere that the thing you fight the most is being complacent in what you do, and you're taking for granted where you're at, and you're not putting the same type of effort into what you need to be doing. And I thought, man, that is so poignant in the game of football when you look at some of these teams that stumble to a team they shouldn't stumble to, in that regard. Now, recruiting wise, you guys, when you got there, now, have you watched some tape of the defense from last year and had a chance to evaluate some guys, or is your mind going in, I'm just going to go evaluations from the day we start spring practice? I'm not really taking anything from there as we go forward.
No, I watched a little bit of the guys. I wasn't looking at it, so much from a holistic lens. I wasn't trying to figure out the schemes and what were they running and this and that. I mean, a little bit, but I wanted to see individual players. I wanted to see who was fighting late in games. Yeah. I wanted to see who was making plays. I wanted to see who was flashing. I wanted to get a feel for the guys, the guys that were coming back, and the guys at the time that were in the portal, who's worth fighting to get back, and who do we say bon voyage to? So, we looked a little bit. At the same time, we're bringing new talent in. So I think Coach Signetti called it 4th and 1 for like 3 weeks straight. And that's kind of how it felt. We're getting pulled in a lot of directions. But to your question, I did go back and look at the film. I wanted to see what individuals flashed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know some of those may have been, 1-year guys because they were portal guys. And I know how that's changed college football in a lot of ways, some good, some bad. But so, yeah, you've at least got a sense of what you got, what you got, and then you got what you got to mold around it. Now, how do you feel about the depth that you have right now defensively? You feel comfortable at your depth, even thinking with some of the kids that you're bringing in, be it freshmen or whatever? Do you feel like, depth wise, you feeling good about your depth, or I wish we could have this a little bit, how DCs get, they went a little bit more.
Yeah, you're going to answer that one for me. No, I'm not happy with the depth. I want more depth, because depth to me is just competition. It's just more guys fighting for something. And then what that does is it raises the water level for everybody, right? All boats rise there. So, I want more. I think there's some spots in particular that I would like to get more bodies into to push those guys in the front. And listen, injuries are a real thing. It's just part of the sport. You want to be aware of that too. You want to be aware of the fact, like, okay, what is the defense day one, and what all can we survive? Because unfortunately, injuries are part of this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the unknown variable that you run into, and depth. There's two things with depth, like you said. One, from a competition standpoint, so you can establish who is your 1, 2, or 3s, but also knowing that you could run into injury problems, and you got to have guys ready to go at the drop of the hat. And that goes back to what you were talking about, the defensive component being simplistic inwardly, but complicated outwardly. You got to have guys that understand what you're doing, whether it's the guy that's starting or it's the guy that's 2 plays away. And that's the part that you're talking about.
No doubt. And I'll tell you what, like, I'm so excited about this staff too, because the staff understands that they recognize, and you can quickly identify poor coaches across the country, and to me, what that looks like is the starter is coached very well. He knows every check, and he knows every nuance of every offense or defense, what have you. But the backup is clueless. I mean, if the guy goes down, the backup has no clue what's happening. So don't do that. You have to have a room, a position group. And Urban Meyer calls it power your unit being your position group. Your unit has to understand the defense or the offense, the position, the nuance, the check, the coverage, the spacing, whatever it is. They should all know it because injuries are going to happen. Next guy in, don't miss a beat.
Yeah, and that's the part where repetitions become involved because the number 2 guy may not get as much as number 1, and the number 3 may get very, very little. And all of a sudden he finds him as being that next guy, which is 2, which is stat count's going to go way up in that regard. But depth and repetition is all that. What would you say? And maybe forgive me if I've already asked this and you've answered it in that regard. I guess, what does Coach Signetti expect from his defense that you know, hey, Bryant, it's your show, baby, but here's what I want it to be. Boom, boom, boom. You know, kind of that mentality. You run it, you do what you want to do, but here's my personality that I want to inflect upon the defensive unit.
Right. So the first 3 things are that he wants a defense that's fast, physical, and relentless. You're going to probably hear me say that every single time that we talk and you ask about who are you guys on defense? Fast. We're going to be very fast. We're going to be very physical, and we're going to play with a motor. You know, we're going to have an unbreakable will about us. We're going to rally to the ball. We're going to swarm. We're going to be very aggressive. He wants to stop the run. It's important to coach, and that's important to me too. We've done that in my 2 years as a coordinator. My first year as a coordinator, we were number 2 defense in the country at stopping the run. We were 1 for a long time, and then Georgia went on a tear and took the number 1 spot from us in that title game against TCU back in 22. This past year, we're number 1 in the country in stopping the run by a good amount. I hope to continue that trend. We're going to stop the run. We're going to make teams play left-handed. So you're going to have to do things that you're uncomfortable to do to try to beat our defenses. So stop the run, fast, physical. He likes aggression. Thankfully, he hired me as a DC, and I'm aggressive. I blitz a lot. I want to hit quarterbacks. I want to put offenses behind the sticks. I believe that you can win football games on defense by creating explosives in the same way that an offense tries to create explosives. Offenses have max protection shots where guys run a quadruple move down the field. Why can't I bring a 25-man pressure? I'm kidding. I only get 11, but I'll bring them all. If I have to, I'll bring them all.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. You know, it's, you know, the chunk plays, or however you wanted to put it, on defense is, like you said, playing behind the sticks. You know, your odds of going up, of getting off the field in 3 downs, if you can keep them at 3rd and 8 or more, and you know, your odds are in your favor. But if you're giving up chunk plays on 1st and 2nd down and it's 3rd and 3 or less, you're battling against the percentages that you're going to get off the field. And that's the one thing that, you know, I can appreciate from Coach Signetti, because sometimes DCs, they get to run the show, but they may, you know, a head coach may not communicate what he wants. You know what I mean? Right. And at least he's, you know, and I'm sure you're accountable to that. I mean, that's his measurement right there. You gave his measurement, and you're accountable for those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's other things too. You know, there's game management. There's bend, don't break, which means holding a field goal. You know, be successful in the red area. He's huge on 3rd down percentage. I mean, to the point you were just making, like, at the end of the day, this is still a game of metrics. It's about numbers. It's 3rd and 3 is different than 3rd and 11. You know, you're playing percentage odds. So yeah, I mean,
analytics,
holding a field goals, be great on 3rd down. We need turnovers. You have to damage the quarterback. You know, this is a former quarterback. Like, once you get hit, I'm not talking about like touch. I'm talking about, like, if you get hit, things change. Like, the clock speeds up a little bit. I've talked you into maybe an error on that next blitz that I bring. So all of those things tie in. But those are kind of the floorboards of what Coach Signetti believes in.
Okay, we're gonna wrap this up, because I know that you're probably tired and want to decompress from a day of recruiting and stuff. You got spring practice coming up here in March. Tuesdays, is it Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays? Is that, am I thinking correctly there?
It is, yeah. Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays. We'll go in the morning, so it'll be morning practices for us, and then we'll typically scrimmage after that first Saturday. So the second Saturday comes, we'll get some scrimmaging.
Yeah, and I think the spring game is actually going to be part of Little Five, which I think is the 18th. I think I have it down as.
I believe you're right. Yeah, Thursday the 18th. Yeah.
Thursday the 18th, and that whole weekend is the start of Little Five, and we know what that environment is. And even back to the days when we were in school, or I was in school. But then even after that game, I still think you've got like 4 or 5 practices left. How's that going to be? Having a spring game where it's on the schedule, and then knowing that you got a few more practices left. Did you do that same thing at JMU, or is this just a new, attempt at, guarding the red and white to get into Memorial Stadium?
Yeah, well, that's kind of a new thing, but it is kind of the way that the schedule laid itself out, what we thought we had available day-wise. And then having a couple of extra practices can be a good thing. You never know what's going to happen in terms of like weather and things like that. We're halfway through a practice, right? And here comes lightning and thunder. Well, we have one banked. And then Coach is real innovative about stuff like that. We might have 2 or 3 more practices left, and we go out in shorts for a nice extended walkthrough and a little, slightly competitive stuff. Maybe we want to install a few more packages or work on 2-minute short yardage. So he'll find ways to use the time that we have available. And I can't even tell you what that's going to be. I don't even think he knows yet, but he's going to get an eye on his football team, figure out strengths and weaknesses, and we'll plan an attack from there.
Well, I know this. Your quarterback room is going to be ultra competitive. I've talked to 2 of them. I talked to Curtis O'Rourke and Tyler Cherry, and the competition in that room is going to be uncomparable because there's a lot of talent in there, including Brock Lowry, who's, a kid that's still hanging around, and all of them can throw it. Let's just put it that way. Then you got a wide receiver room that's also ridiculous. You're going to have fun you're going to have some fun this spring.
I hope it's fun for us and not them.
Well, you know what? You tell DBs, you got to have a short memory. But you've got that. Now. Are you all set with your 24 class? I mean, the recruiting you're doing now is more 25, 26, getting kids to campus, whether it be a junior day or sometime later in the summer. Is that kind of what you're doing now in your recruiting?
The 24 class is very, very close to being done. I say that because you never know what's going to pop up. There's still some moving and shaking that could go down. And if a position of need, if there's a 24 out there in a position of, I don't think we close the door on that, but yeah, what we're doing is we're looking at the following class: 25s, 26s, young talent, especially hammering the 4-hour radius. So if you draw a circle, 4 hours from Bloomington, let's make sure that we're on these guys early, and we're building relationships and getting them on campus, because once they're on campus, you got a shot at them. Bloomington's special that way.
Yeah. That's the battle, getting them on campus. That's always the battle, and then the campus speaks for itself in that regard. Now. There's still kind of a quasi signing date in February, correct?
Yes.
That's kind of the end all be all date to the class of 24 to really officially sign. Do you know when that is? Is that the 7th, 14th, or
the 7th this year? It's usually the first, full Tuesday.
Okay. Now, will you guys have something special for that day, or do you know yet?
I don't fully know, but I know that a lot of that class that you're speaking to, the 24 classes, is signed, tucked away, and but you never know.
That's the beauty of it. Even though I can say back in the good old days, we went right to February 7th. There was no 4th and 1 went a lot longer than it did in this day's world, but. Well, I appreciate it, man. I know you're busy. I know that your time is, ultra valuable. Sleep, getting rest. I forgot to ask this: are you any significant others?
Not at the moment. Not at the moment.
Okay.
No, football is the significant other right now. Football.
Okay, there you go, ladies. If you understand football, there's a guy for you right there. It'd be fine gentlemen to.
They're gonna be like, wait, didn't he say he was on food stamps and had the bathroom falling into the living room?
Oh, hey man, I understand it, and I didn't know because it kind of lost connection there, but I thought I'd better ask in that regard. But man, I'm so proud of you and what you've done as a Ball State Cardinal, and then doing your journey. It speaks to what this profession's about by earning where you're at and not being given something because you were at the right place at the right time, not to, demonize that, but I know what you've gone through to get where you're at today. And that's the thing I'm proud about for you. Wish you the best. I hope I can get down there for maybe a spring practice if you let me in.
Doors are always open for you, Coach.
I'll tell Cignetti I had the good eye first.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, Bryant, man, I thank you for joining me. I'm gonna send you off here. Then I will come back and I'll say officially goodbye to you after I sign off of this segment of the Hoosier Football Tailgate. All right, my man.
Awesome. Appreciate you, bro.
Thanks, buddy. Well, that was Bryant Haines, defense coordinator for the Indiana Hoosiers. Going to be a fun bunch to watch in his philosophy defense. I'm telling you, he's got a high motor as a coach even. I think you're going to be very, very pleased with what you see on a Saturday afternoon. Thanks again to Bet Online. Remember, Bet Online, all things sports wagering, up-to-minute odds, things that make you a better sports wager. Bet Online is where the game starts. We'll catch you next time on the Hoosier Football Tailgate. But for now, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. So long from Hoosier Football Tailgate.